Hello, and welcome to RiverLink's lesson on stormwater and land use. Today we'll be using our interactive stormwater model to look at various different types of land use and developments that you might find within your own community. We'll then get to see how these developments interact with stormwater and the effects that they can have on your neighborhood and your local streams and rivers. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. Our stormwater model is made up of plastic and acrylic, and has a beautiful little community of tiny monopoly houses dotting the landscape. The river that runs through this community fills up with water from the various types of land uses that we see at the top of the model. For each type of land use that we use, we'll be pouring the same amount of water into the simulation. The first type of land use that we're going to look at is wetlands. Wetlands can be beautiful natural features. These are distinct ecosystems that are flooded by water, either permanently or seasonally, and serve as a great habitat for many creatures. They're also highly absorbent in nature. In our model, our wetland is represented by 6 sponges. These sponges are also quite absorbent in nature and act as a good replication of our natural wetlands. As you can see, the rain is falling pretty heavily on them, and we still have none flowing out of the front into our river. Eventually, however, the water does begin to flow as the wetland, or the sponges, reaches its maximum capacity for carrying water. As the water flows downstream, it starts to reach our first little community on the left. These houses are built pretty close to the river, and they're lucky that the wetland has held back so much of the rainwater. It looks like our homes are going to be safe this time from any sort of flooding. However, our upland wetland is now saturated with water and will not be able to hold back nearly as much rainwater during the next storm. If we look at the scale on the side of the model, we see that the water reaches a level of about 5.06. We'll need to keep this number in mind for reference with our later trials using different landforms. As we squeeze out our sponges, we see just how much water our wetland was able to absorb. Next, let's take a look at a much more urban type of land use, parking lots. Parking lots have become essential for our day-to-day lives. However, these spaces are often made using what we call impervious surfaces. These are surfaces such as asphalt or concrete that don't allow water to filter down through them into the soil. Our parking lot here has some Hot Wheels and a lovely shopping mall, and as the rain begins to fall, we see that it goes directly off the parking lot and into our river. There's nothing to absorb it, and nothing to hold that water back. As the water flows downstream, we see it comes on much quicker than it did in our test with the wetland, and it very quickly begins to overtake our homes in our low-lying communities. Unfortunately for these homes, they're pretty light and they get washed right downstream. Our downstream communities are no exception to this flooding. Without anything to hold these rainwaters back, many communities see themselves underwater and facing some pretty big challenges in the near future. If we look at our scale, we see that the water rises much higher than on our trial with the wetlands. We end up at a level of about 5.16. For our final land use, we'll be looking at retention ponds, also known as stormwater control measures. These features are a wonderful compromise between the urban and environmental needs of a community. Their main function is to serve as a holding cell for the excess stormwater before it enters a local waterway. These features can be installed in many locations, including alongside roads and parking lots, beside greenways, and in residential areas. As water enters the retention pond, it pools up behind the embankment. The water level must then rise high enough to exit the pond through the discharge pipe. On our model, our retention pond is found underneath our parking lot, and you can even see a small discharge pipe facing the river. As we begin to make it rain, we can see that the water flows directly off the parking lot, just like before. But this time, there is a retention pond to capture all of the excess. We can see that it takes quite a while for any water to start flowing out of our discharge pipe. That means our retention pond is doing its job quite well. As we move downstream, we see a river flow that is much more similar to our wetland flow than the one we saw with our parking lot. Our houses and communities seem to be safe from flooding, thanks to the extra stormwater capacity provided to us by our retention pond. Installing retention ponds and stormwater control measures is one of the main ways that RiverLink works to address stream health within western North Carolina. If we look at our scale one last time, we see that the water rises to only 5.04, even lower than our first trial with the wetlands. Alright, so today we learned about 3 distinct land uses or developments that you might find along a stream or river: wetlands, parking lots, and retention ponds. We learned that wetlands are not only great at providing habitat for animals, they also soak up a ton of rainwater and prevent damage to our downstream human communities. We learned that the impervious surfaces of our parking lots can lead to an excess of runoff, which can promote downstream flooding in our neighborhoods. And we learned that retention ponds are a great way of controlling our stormwater while still allowing for the existence of our essential functions in an urban environment. We here at RiverLink believe that a healthy stream or river can lead to a thriving community. We hope that through this video today you learned something new and will now go forth and help promote healthy stream ecosystems within your own neighborhood. Thank you.